Welcome back. This is the Something Else podcast. I am your host, James David Dixon. And this week I did something special for you guys. This week I did all my listeners a favor. Jocelyn Benson, the lady you see here, our current Secretary of State, now running to be governor, I read her memoir, The Purposeful Warrior, because I knew you wouldn't. If you didn't see that Jocelyn Benson had a book out called The Purposeful Warrior, don't be mad. Nobody else did either. Benson's memoir dropped this May, and by Memorial Day, it sank like a stone to the bottom of Lake Michigan. The only reason that stone has resurfaced today is so it can be busted into rocks, and those rocks can be thrown at the Benson campaign. So here's 3 takeaways on Jocelyn Benson, taken from her own memoir, said in her own words. Just a little programming note before we get started in earnest. If you like what you hear today, subscribe to Something Else on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, on YouTube. Don't just follow me on X at Down I-75, although you should be following me. And if you're listening to this, you probably are. Subscribe. The way I see it, we all spend plenty of money every month on the likes of Netflix and Amazon Prime and Hulu. And what do? They turn around and create projects that confuse your children and contradict your values. What if you could do something else with your time? Well, that something else is what I'm working on here. Short podcasts with actionable information, points that you can make to your friends and enemies alike and make headway. At Something Else, we're here for a good time, not a long time. So without any further delay, let's get into it. These are my 3 takeaways from Jocelyn Benson's memoir. Here's the first one. Jocelyn Benson thinks she's doing us a favor. Jocelyn Benson thinks she's doing the people of Michigan a favor by living here, and she basically says as much. Benson writes that while most of her Harvard Law classmates went to New York, Washington, and San Francisco, she came to Detroit. Quote, they landed jobs at prestigious law firms or positions clerking for high-profile judges. I moved to Detroit. But Benson came here on a judicial clerkship herself. She worked for a legend, Judge Damon Keith. In Michigan, that's about as high profile as it gets. But it must not be high profile enough for Benson, who puts Detroit in contrast to the vibrant, inspiring places she'd lived before. Like New York, where she worked for NPR. Or Boston, where she attended law school. Or England, where she was a Marshall Scholar. You might have been moved by Tim Allen's voice in those Pure Michigan commercials, but Jocelyn Benson only tolerated it. She continues, if I wasn't living in New York or Washington, D.C., someone else just as qualified or as effective as me would be there in my place, doing similar work and probably having a similar impact. Could I say the same, though, about Michigan? I wanted to go where my presence made a positive difference in other people's lives. And I wanted to live and invest my time and raise my family in a place where we could earn a living, learn to be gritty and graceful, kind and tough, and do real, meaningful, purposeful work. So in New York and Washington, the land of the overeducated, Jocelyn Benson's Harvard degree would not have made that much difference. But in Michigan, it would help her make a difference in people's lives. Translation, Jocelyn Benson thinks we're country bumpkins who are lucky to have her. She thinks we fell off the turnip truck, and oh my God, her dazzling Harvard degree is here to save us all. From what I can see, Benson has it exactly flipped around. Jocelyn Benson has taken plenty from Detroit, including a career in politics, a reputation as an election expert, and apparently even grit. But what has she ever given to Detroit? Last week, Benson tweeted in shock a Detroit News headline that found that more than half of the kids in Detroit live in poverty. You'd never know this from her tweet, but Jocelyn Benson's lived in Detroit for 20 years now. If she had to learn how impoverished the children of Detroit are, which is to say the people and the families of Detroit are, if she had to learn that from a headline, that says everything about her investment in Detroit and Detroiters, and it says bad things. It says that Jocelyn Benson lives a cloistered, segregated, insulated life, cut off from the realities of the typical Detroiter. Her son attends private school. The woman who wants to run our state of 10 million people takes zero interest in the city where she currently lives. She takes zero interest in Detroit City and her 600,000 neighbors there. That's what the kids might call a red flag. Here's an uncomfortable truth, and Jocelyn Benson won't realize this until November 4th, 2026. Not until she's lost an election where she had to count the votes herself. Jocelyn Benson needs Michigan a whole heck of a lot more than Michigan ever needed Jocelyn Benson. This might come as news to you, Josh, but Michigan's going to go on spinning no matter who wins. But when you lose, it's game over for you in politics. The second thing you should know about Jocelyn Benson is the 2000 election, Bush versus Gore, is Jocelyn Benson's origin story in politics. There's an entire section in the book about it called Rage as a Tool to Make Things Better. Benson describes the 2000 election as something that reshaped the landscape of our democracy and tore our country apart. The more I read on, the more I realized that Jocelyn Benson's not alone in that sentiment. The entire modern left and its ends justify the means mentality, a lot of it traces back to the 2000 election. As Benson and the Democrats see it, the 2000 election was stolen for George W. Bush because Florida Secretary of State Katherine Harris stopped counting votes. Here's what Benson writes. Secretary Harris certified Bush as the winner of Florida's electoral votes and refused to allow a full recount. In no small part because Secretary Harris had delayed and then blocked a recount, Bush was declared the winner of Florida and the presidency. I was outraged, Benson writes. I was furious. And like so many Americans living in the moment, observing everything unfold, I was powerless. The 2000 election re-radicalized the left and their mission to bring fundamental change to America. Notice they never say fundamental improvement. They say fundamental change. In the aftermath of 2000, Benson worked on efforts to help pass the Help America Vote Act, which was supposedly designed to prevent another Florida. Despite George Bush winning because he won Florida, Bush still signed this into law. And so it's a great irony that right now the U.S. Department of Justice under Donald Trump is now suing Benson under the Help America Vote Act for her refusal to hand over Michigan's voter rolls. But it's not just Benson that the 2000 election radicalized. It's the entire left. Think about all what resulted from that. Move On resulted from 2000. The National Popular Vote movement resulted from 2000. The Help America Vote Act resulted from 2000. Benson actually decided to study the work of secretaries of state and even wrote a book on it. In 2010, she ran for Michigan Secretary of State and lost. Shout out to Ruth Johnson. In 2018, Benson ran again, and this time she won. She rode Gretchen Whitmer's coattails to office, and in so doing, she became, as she calls the Secretary of State position, a guardian of democracy. Surprised she didn't call it our democracy. I guess they weren't using that nomenclature back then. So what happened then? Winning in 2018 put Benson in position of running the 2020 election in Michigan. Benson writes, 2 full decades after the frustration of the 2000 election, I had found and realized a great purpose. The New York Times called Benson a not-so-secret weapon in Michigan, and she repeats that claim in her memoir. She even brags about it. This is the third takeaway from the Jocelyn Benson memoir, and it might be the most important. Jocelyn Benson's whole career has built to this exact moment, when Benson will run her election as Secretary of State while appearing on the ballot as governor. Katie Hobbs in Arizona traveled this exact path in 2022 and got her way to the governor's office. I think Jocelyn Benson is probably more self-aware than Gretchen Whitmer. You can tell from her nervous energy, her stilted demeanor, that Jocelyn Benson knows she's not ever going to be president. She has no real ambitions for that. Benson is a bit more dangerous, though, because the governor's office, is all she wants. And it's all been building to this. The Southern Poverty Law Center, the Harvard degree, and what she obviously sees as her missionary work in Detroit, studying the Secretary of State position and then running for it, and 3 times of running, Benson won twice. And it's all built to this moment right now, the 2026 election, where Jocelyn Benson will run the election as Secretary of State while running for the governor's office. As Election Day approaches, the same tools for fortifying Michigan are at her disposal that were in 2020. The Zuckerbucks aren't there anymore, but there's no shortage of Democrats with deep pockets who can fill the coffers of her zombie nonprofit. That zombie nonprofit, the Michigan Center for Election Law and Administration, it's one grant away from being revived and called into action. When Benson does partner with it again, the repeaters on the Lansing media won't question the arrangement, just as they did not in 2020. Then there's the bloated voter rolls. If Benson again sends out absentee ballot applications to every registered voter, rather than active voters, well, that's about 500,000 possible fraudulent votes that could be cast. And because of the way the illegal Chinese voter story was reported out last year, 10,000 other men just like Ho Ching Gao know that if they vote illegally in Michigan, they won't be caught unless they turn themselves in. That's another fraud door that Jocelyn Benson has flung open wide. If Benson orders the code blue and again tells election clerks in Michigan to presume that mail-in ballots are valid, the Michigan Republicans and the national Republicans need to be ready to go with federal litigation, not state-level stuff that's going to be handled by Democrats. We know exactly how elections are fortified in Michigan because Jocelyn Benson told us in her memoir. Jocelyn Benson's whole life has been building to this moment. Will a Pittsburgh carpetbagger with the Harvard degree and a Steelers terrible towel win Michigan? All we know for sure is that she'll take every opportunity she can to fortify it. If you like what you heard just now, do me a favor, send this to a friend.